Hello, welcome to Strong 4, our all-day live for Strong 4. We had a milk strong, buttermilk, last strong, so we weren't here for our lives. And, you know,
Let's get back on task. We are going live about our reversal of roles, reversal of fortunes. That is the new live series that we are doing at the moment. So we just finished our Daylife military careers lives that we did. We did 12 of those. I don't know if you tuned in for any of those. They were, we went into what our careers were like here, or are like, or were like, and what the origin of them being what they are is. Now we're going to get a little bit more specific and talk about how our roles changed and what our fortunes have been since then. And, as always, there's going to be more sponsors and, ways to wash and all that as well. But that's the meat and potatoes.
Yeah, so before we start getting into that, we'll kick it off with some don't wants and don't needs. And as usual, I'm covering the don't needs, the things that I don't need. And what if I've been thinking about this strong in terms of the things that I do not need? I actually have been reviewing a lot of the daily every morning I say stuff that makes me joyful. And I've been reviewing them this strong, and I've noticed that I've been speaking a lot more in terms of things that make me joyful are things not happening or me not doing things. And right now I don't need to lack faith. I think I don't need to lack faith. I've been proven time and time again that there's no point in doing that. The things I lack faith about are always I'm proven wrong. Yet I still do it, and I don't need, any kind of drama or a dramatic reaction on my own part to my day-to-day life or things that come my way. And I don't need humorlessness. That's a big one. And I don't need to feel guilty, especially around give and take. I tend to my guilt is wound up a lot in feeling guilty that I'm not doing something, or for feeling guilty for somebody else. It's kind of the parts of empathy that people don't talk about as being kind of not very useful or helpful to yourself or other people. So I'll end it there. Those are some of the things that I don't need anytime, but thinking about it this strong in particular.
All right, let's go through some don't wants. I don't really want to be off center from, feeling centered in my life. Don't want to hold on to any resentments or have some sort of tunnel vision about dog with a bone that some one thing in my life is going to be the thing that makes everything work. Don't need to be in molds that don't fit Don't need to try and force things to work that aren't working or don't work. And let's see what else. I don't want to learn from I'd like to keep learning from mistakes, but I don't want mistakes to be my primary learning way of learning. Yeah, that's what I got this week. This strong. Big mistake.
Alrighty. I thought, this kind of changes from strong to strong depending on what's happening, but it felt like it would be a good time right now to do a little symbolism check-in, what's happening in the world. I know we do like cult check-ins, what's happening with cults and the word cult at large out there, but I wanted to ask you, what's happening with Jews in holes lately?
Well, they just found out that they're like underground tunnels underneath 770, which is the Chabad headquarters. For those of you who don't know what Chabad is like the Hasidic movement that is probably the most prominent spreader of Judaism, like in the last 100 years. And their headquarters, apparently there's underground passages underneath them that lead. I don't exactly know where they lead, but people have looked into that. But they lead, they're underground tunnels, and it was just exposed that that's happening. The extent of which, it's probably goes a lot, as holes do, They probably go deeper than people even know. So. And
in terms of, looking at what's happening in the larger story as symbols for our own lives, what the symbols are telling us, what's your relation to this story, or like what's happening?
Well, as a Jew, I tend to dig holes in relationships and resources, just tend to, owe more than I give. So it's seeing that mirrored in the Jewish world. Any symbols going on for you out there?
I have my own, implications. I wouldn't say that. That symbol's not for me in the way that it's so, on the nose for you. But I've been trying to think this strong about what that storyline means for me. And I have some thoughts, but I don't think they're, formulated or ready to be brought out into public. I'm kind of more of a private processing type person. So I'm trying to think of other symbols, just symbols for me. There's been some pretty heavy symbols around management in terms of the workers that I encounter, just service industry, hospitality industry, and kind of I've been seeing a lot of chaos in the service industry world, or being witness to it just as a customer lately. And actually just this morning was witnessing, it kind of has just been getting crazier and crazier actually in the last month. And the craziness is around just chain of command being muddled or muddied, transitioning new management, systems being faulty or causing problems, point of sale, stuff like that. I don't know. I think that like I've been thinking about management structure in this army, and I think that there's probably lots of things that Yahuwah is showing me in those outside examples to like give me some kind of insight into what's happening in my own life in those realms, even if they're like different realms. But I think right now I'll just sum it up with I've been seeing a lot of uncertainty causing problems, and I can definitely see in my own life how certainty has helped me and uncertainty has really worked against me and like what I'm managing or organizing being like chaotic versus way less chaotic. So that's what I have to say. Anything else you have lingering about digging holes, Orthodox Judaism? I mean, I gotta say, like, this army, we have like themes with each other and things that like we're kind of talking about a lot, and you've talked about and we've talked about you and digging holes for like a long time pretty heavy-handedly. So I just was like, this is like a crazy kind of funny symbol. It's just how like on the nose it was in terms of just like seeing things out there that are for us, whatever we have to learn from them,
Yep. Yeah.
And sometimes I feel like I wish I had something a little more obvious. I feel like I try to make things more complicated, and I just want to see something that just like sings with like simplicity, like boom,
Cocaine bear.
Boom. Like, yeah, I want my own like cocaine bear that comes out and be like, that movie was made for me. Or just like something that's like an obvious, I want to see something like dumb obvious on the nose. Be like, there's a bird flying with candy in her mouth and being crazy.
Give me a sign.
Give me a sign, Yahuwah. Show me the way. What do I need to learn? What do I not need?
I don't know. I think you get a bunch of those. What about Maria Bamford releasing like a cult book? Oh, you want one literal? Like a bird eating candy? That's what you need right now? You need like a news... It's on the news story. A stork ate, a nerd's rope. Thinking it was a snake.
Choked on a nerd's rope. I don't know. Just a passing thought. Why don't we get into the meat of it today? I actually have like this thing that might take a while that I think is like a good part one for us, because I was looking at these like articles and like getting a little confused, and I was like, maybe I shouldn't be confused about this kind of stuff. But I wanted to go over, part one, DLA Reversal of Fortunes, our running series. I wanted to start with like what our runks have been over the years here and what they actually mean, which I feel a little confused about. And I think even on one of these lives, we kind of were talking about that, and I just wanted to get it straight out of the gate, as they say. So what have your runks been here? When did the reversal of Fortune's runk or whatever happen? Or what were those changes in runk?
Well, I trained as a lieutenant, but as soon as I graduated officer school, I started off as a captain, and then about a year later, maybe a year and a half later, I was demoted, which is the Pleasure Matrix way of saying promoted, to major from captain. And then almost 2 years ago, a year and 9 months ago or so, I was promoted, which is the reversal of demoted, to master sergeant.
So, yeah, since it's an inverted pyramid structure here, like when we say promoted, you're going up the ranks, but it's like towards the what the real, or not real, what the pain matrix military structure, a little Freudian slip there, would deem as like a demotion, if that makes sense. And so like, you said you started out in officer school for lieutenant rank, and that's something that I was like honestly not even totally clear on until I really like was looking into it today. But a non-commissioned versus a commissioned officer or a commissioned soldier, the difference is that as a commissioned soldier, you're like, you go to officer school and you like get your like rank through going through an officer school and getting officer. Like you get put in it. It's almost like more of like a career where you get placed, whereas a commissioned or a non-commissioned officer, you go through the ranks and get promoted or demoted depending on like doing your service and your training and going through the shit, you know? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We both started training in officer school, I believe, like just at different times, and you were like on a track towards a lieutenant or a major. Were they both commissioned?
Yeah,
because that was like you were in officer school.
It's a little scary that you don't know these things.
It's not my strong suit. It's kind of just like, I don't know if it's me or whatever, but this kind of stuff, I'll just like my eyes glaze over and I don't really understand. And it's pretty funny given what I'm doing. But anyways, so like I was also in officer school to be a commissioned officer. And everyone in my officer school, all of the soldiers, I don't know if the word is flunked out, but it was pretty obvious pretty soon that like we were gonna actually be non-commissioned. So we were gonna start out as NCOs, and do things by either being promoted or demoted and getting our ranks that route. So I started as a commissioned or non-commissioned non-commissioned soldier with the
officer.
rank.
Non-commissioned officer.
Yeah, non-commissioned officer. And I was sergeant.
You were sergeant major at that point.
Yeah. Sergeant major. And I think like that's for another time. I think I had no reasons why this stuff is like fuzzy to me and like difficult to remember. Then I was basically a sergeant major all the way up until the reversal happened with the two of us. So a lot had changed from beginning my service until that point. And at that point, I was demoted to sergeant major of the Army, which is like SMA, not SGM in terms of like the abbreviations. And it is a totally different rank, even if it, to me at least, sounded similar. So the way it was described to me was that as a sergeant major, I was like in charge of, I was the lowest rank of the team of people I was managing when we were like out on the road with him gone. It was just me and 3 other people. And I was the sergeant major, so I was like the one running operations and relaying things down the chain of command and basically in charge of that troop of people. The difference with the demotion to sergeant major of the Army was that I became like it's been described as like the aide de camp, like the on the ground, boots on the ground kind of connector between all of the army and what it is and what's going on, and translating or relaying to the, in this case, the 5-star general, General Koa. So I am like his commanding officer, whereas he used to be my commanding officer. And I don't know, like, did you switch to a non-commissioned officer when you had your demotion?
Yeah.
So that would make sense, because you, as the sergeant major of the army, I'm still non-commissioned, but when I was looking it up, sometimes sergeant majors of the army do outrank some commissioned officers. It's like it's all very confusing to me. The army and the military,
They don't outrank them, but they have positions that are maybe, more of a boss position, like than let's say a first lieutenant, because a first lieutenant is like the in the U.S. Army, it's the lowest rank. The first lieutenant, does not order as many people around as a sergeant major of the army would. But the sergeant major of the army doesn't outrank a commissioned officer. They might, be relaying things
in the flow of like information and what's being like passed up and down chains of command. I guess what I'm trying to say is that they can sometimes be responsible for like getting information from other non-commissioned and commissioned officers, or like seeing what's going on, passing things on, giving the vibe of like where things are at on the ground to the commissioned officers and the general who's not involved or shouldn't be, and in this army we're trying to make that the case, So what about you? Do you want to go into like the ranks you described, what they are, what they're responsible for? I have like reference if you need it to stuff, but yeah.
My understanding of Master Sergeant is it's like a higher ranking version. It's lower than a sergeant major. It's not the highest sergeant rank. It's maybe 2 away from a sergeant major, and it's just a more specialized sergeant. And a sergeant is usually works with the corporals to manage the commissioned, or sorry, not even the non-commissioned, just the enlistees. So it's a really interesting thing because we don't have any enlistees, and it's really weird in a way to be like NCOs with no enlistees, because the primary, like, we're like very bottom heavy. Like we have 2 generals and then we have 2 NCOs, and then we don't have any enlistees that we manage. We have like URL soldiers.
We're basically like a giant container that has every bottom brass roll ready, and it's just like containers for when they will be filled, if that makes sense.
Right. So there'll be plenty more of kind of sergeant tasks to do when more people show up. But yeah, a sergeant kind of manages those people and is like, will be a troop leader, usually has actually more of a relationship with the commissioned officer, like either the lieutenant or the captain who is leading a platoon. Usually the sergeant is the one who is kind of liaisoning with them on the ground if there's an operation happening. Less so my understanding, it's less so dealing with the sergeant major of the army, who's more like on the base handling stuff, less of like a combat role. Master sergeant is a little bit closer to a combat role in my understanding. And it's interesting that Wikipedia has Israel Defense Forces.
It's a first example in your rank.
I don't know. Yeah, my dad was a sergeant. He wasn't a master sergeant. I think he was I don't know actually, second sergeant, something. He was some kind of sergeant. So I'm not sure how much like sergeant tasks I'm really taking care of. I'm not exactly sure what it means here as much. But I do have a specialized thing that I do, and I kind of follow it. So
and there's so many differences in this army, starting out most largely with we're a no munitions, no murder army. We're a social military. So like the things that, it's interesting that we have this structure, but what we're putting up or passing up and down the chain of command are orders and operations that are very, very different and have never been done before in the context of like an army structure. So as the sergeant major of the army, I am definitely like passing along information. I'm logistically handling things up and down chain of command and like relaying orders for other soldiers. Basically like if there's information that the generals of the army want passed along, or orders that they are needing to have passed along, I'm like the person there that does that. And I think that when the sign of like a well-functioning army structure is when the generals can just pass things along, and it's very like I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, like automized, like there doesn't need to be a lot of work on their part because they're handling larger things, and I think what you're saying about the more specialized role for you before there are like other IRL soldiers here, trainees and enlistees to be corralling or whatever, it makes sense where we're at with what our ranks are. Seems like something I remember from when there were lots of ranks being assigned willy-nilly back in the prototyping days, that the people who, I don't know if this is true, maybe you can let me know, but I remember one soldier being like, talking about how you in particular didn't really have like the competitive like vibe that she was picking up on from other people, but you had one of the lowest ranks, and that in general like people who want the responsibility less or like are not gunning for a big position were typically the people who were given those here.
I don't know. I asked for both of my promotions. I was training to be lieutenant. I asked to be a captain instead, and I asked to be promoted to major. I'm not sure who that soldier was who said that. There is like the old saying that a reluctant ruler is the best ruler. Like a king who doesn't want to be king is gonna be the best at being a king because they're not in it for the power or whatever. do you find it that way, that you have been your I don't know what your reluctance to lead has made you a better leader?
This is the thing I was saying I didn't know if I should get into, but I'll just get into it now, which is I think that I have, as a white woman, I'm in a power quadrant in the pain matrix and by that I mean I have the most power in the pain matrix, and part of the way white women do that is we pretend to have the least power, and we don't know what power is, and we're oh, whoopsies, kind of that vibe. And so I think that I brought that over into this army, and that I was really disassociated about my power, and to the point where I don't even know runks and what they mean, or it all confuses me, and I have to look up the difference between non-commissioned and commissioned officer. I think that my racket of not really having power by pretending to be powerless has carried over a bit here. And I think in the beginning when I was here, I would have said I don't want to have any large responsibility, all these people should have bigger jobs than me, I'm whatever. But I think that really inside I was definitely competitive and wanted power. But in the pleasure matrix, it's different. It's an inversion, right? I'm that's not my area to explore. That's not what I actually really want.
Graduated that round of officer school. Everyone else left.
I was the only one that graduated. And I think that's it feels more honest that I do want power, or that I don't when I have it threatened or taken away or whatever. But I don't know, honestly, in myself I don't feel a desire to go down the runks or to have I don't like being your commanding officer, in some ways. In a lot of the times it's annoying to have to manage someone, because invariably anyone that's being managed, at least here in this army, maybe it's different in the actual army, but they're annoyed to be managed, and they're protesting it the whole way. So I don't want to have to deal with that. And part of me is not feeling a military career is much of my desire for, or I don't want to say the word desire, much of my want and need for my future. But I think things are better in my life after having been someone who is a commanding officer with direct reports, rather than being the direct report. And I still have the generals that are outrunk me and who I follow the orders of. But between the two of us, I guess I like it different this way. But also you probably I don't know, maybe I'm saying something for you, but it feels like you liked it when it was the other way. Maybe it's just always the person who's the commanding officer likes it more when they're the commanding officer.
I mean, there's it had its own bullshit. I did not enjoy being a middleman between the generals and the enlistees, and because there were enlistees at the time that I was doing it, and there were more people, and it wasn't always fun to do that. But in the end, I think that parts of it were more I would do things differently given another opportunity at it, for sure. I would use that responsibility in a wiser way than what I did with it, which is, just, didn't put my energy in the right places, which I should have. So I certainly don't I don't necessarily being just the one at the top of the chain, but there's advantages to not having to, have day-to-day contact with the generals. I do appreciate that. I mean, there's times where in the transition process that I was upset about it, but now I tend to feel better when I don't have day-to-day access. That's just a personal preference of mine, I guess.
Well, I think that's enough. I think we got into just the basics that I wanted to cover, and we even went past it a little. So, we'll be back for part 2 next strong. This program is sponsored by the Automat. So if you have never made a wash before, what a great time to start. You can DM me for more information, but to get started, you should just make a financial wash. That's how most people begin their washing. And you can make a wash in a multiple of 12 to cash.me/$washitall, paypal.me/washitall, or you can inquire with me at Daylife Mary on Instagram for crypto links, Apple Pay, snail mail, whatever way works. We've got a lot of options. And as washing is best done in pairs, you can then ask about what social wash you would be assigned. And social washing is just another way of washing that belief. Washing that belief out of the pain matrix. And getting a little soul back, see what you do with it. So that's it for today. A little short and sweet. We will see you later. Sayonara. Back for the beginning of month 2, which is Philippuary. I don't even know how to say that. Philippuary. That's the month. Okay.
All right.
Bye-bye.